Today we take up the episode universally recognized as the worst in TOS, Spock's brain.
Compliance, the final frontier. Tom Fox is the voyager of trekking through compliance. His mission? To explore the original series and seek out and share what it can teach you about compliance. Here's your host, Tom Fox.
In this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, we consider the episode Spock's Brain, which aired on September 20, 1968, and occurred on Stardate 5431.4. This is the first episode of the final season of Star Trek Season 3. Story synopsis. The Enterprise encounters an ion-propelled ship of unusual configuration, which then activates a transferal beam. The beam transports a mysterious woman onto the bridge of the Enterprise. Upon arrival, she stuns everyone with a gizmo on her bracelet. She examines the stunned crew on the bridge and appears to take a special interest in Spock, so much so, in fact, that she surgically removes Spock's brain, as McCoy and Kirk discover when they come to a short time later. Luckily, due to Vulcan physiology, Spock's body can be maintained alive mechanically while Kirk goes in search of his brain. When the Enterprise follows the ion trail of the women's ships, they are led to Sigma Draconis system. Out of the 3 habitable planets, scanners detect none which is capable of having constructed an advanced ion-powered craft. Planet 3 is low on the industrial scale, 4 higher, but 6 shows no signs of industrial development and indeed is in a glacial age. Uhura detects regular emissions of high energy from Planet 6 in contradiction to its supposed primitive status. Playing a hunch, Kirk beams down with a landing party to Planet 6. Sigma Draconis 6 is indeed in the middle of an ice age, but Kirk has no trouble locating inhabitants who attack them, believing them to be, quote, the others, end quote. When Kirk captures one of the attackers who calls himself a Morg and questions him, the Morg warns Kirk about the givers of pain and delight. Kirk asks Morg about females of his kind, but he is only met with befuddlement, much like a teenage boy. When Kirk asks the Morg to help find the others, the Morg runs away in terror. The landing party soon locates a dead and buried city and also discovers a trap elevator. Kirk has Bones beamed down with Spock's mechanically controlled body, then intentionally triggers the elevator, which takes them below ground. At the end of their downward journey, Kirk encounters the female and iMorg, Luma, and stuns her with a phaser before she can activate her bracelet. Questioning leads nowhere since Luma has the mind of a child. Spock makes contact with the landing party through a communicator, but before anything can be done, Kirk and his party are apprehended by Kara, the iMorg leader. The landing party is then equipped with immovable belts capable of producing intense pain. In response to Kirk's questions about the whereabouts of Spock's noggin, Kara responds with deep philosophical statement, "Brain and brain, what is brain?" Following this outburst, Bones assures Kirk that all of the iMorg have low intelligence and could not possibly be capable of removing a brain. The answer to this riddle is discovered when Kirk and the crew overpower their guard and follow Spock's instructions to the central controller, which is now actually housing Spock's brain. Here they find Kara, who immediately immobilizes them with their pain belts. Kirk uses the remote control to command Spock to grab Kara's wrist and hit the release button on the bracelet. Spock's brain informs Kirk via communicator that the iMorg have been able to gain temporary understanding of ancient knowledge from a machine called the Teacher. Kirk forces Kara to put on the Teacher, and she uses her newfound sophistication to level a phaser at them. Scotty pretends to faint, and Kirk grabs the phaser away from her. McCoy then uses the Teacher and discovers how to perform a brain transplant. He surgically restores Spock's brain to his mechanically sustained body using a tri-laser connection and a sonic separator just before the knowledge's 3-hour period is exhausted. Luckily, Spock is able to provide some assistance to the procedure after McCoy manages to reconnect his vocal cords. Kirk then informs Kara that the iMorg will have to move to the surface and live as the Morg do. She's not too thrilled by that prospect, but Kirk does at least offer some Federation assistance. Fun fact, this episode is often cited as the worst episode in the entire oeuvre of Star Trek TOS, although it is not my candidate for the worst. Unfortunately, that's coming. The authors of the guidebook Star Trek 101 apply the episode's title, Spock Brains Award, to the worst episode on each series voted by fans. Co-producer Robert Justman described the episode as being the, quote, late lamented, end quote. In his autobiography Up Till Now, William Shatner joked that the plot of the episode is a tribute to NBC executives who slashed the show's budget and placed the show in an undesirable time slot, leading to its eventual cancellation.
So, what's the legacy of Spock's brain? Well, the authors of the guidebook Star Trek 101 applied this episode's title to the Spock's Brain Award, given to the worst episode of each series as voted on by the fans. The recipients were, for the animated series, The Lorelei Signal; for The Next Generation, Genesis; for DS9, Prophet and Lace; for Voyager, Threshold; and for Enterprise, these are the Voyages. Ronald D. Moore once implied that he considered this episode tolerable, but the second weakest installment of TOS after The Lights of Zetar, commenting that it had campy fun to get you through it. So I'm not quite sure if you feel like it's campy or not. I will credit Mr. Sulu in this episode because it marks the third of 5 times that he's seen in the captain's chair while temporarily in command. It occurred in the Errand of Mercy, the Enterprise incident. It will occur in the Lights of Zetar and the Savage Curtain. As I've said several times already, this is universally seen as one of the worst episodes, if not the worst, of Star Trek, the original series. So I'm going to take things in a little bit different direction and ask, what are the business continuity lessons from Spock's brain? Well, when Spock's brain was removed, it left the Enterprise crew in a precarious situation. Obviously, he's the ship's science officer, chief and second in command, and without his expertise and capabilities, well, these are essential to the functioning of the Starship Enterprise. Without Spock's brain, the crew was severely handicapped and struggled to maintain normal operations. So how can organizations implement the key business continuity lessons from this episode? Well, number 1, conduct a critical personnel and role assessment. Identify mission-critical personnel, their specialized knowledge and skills, and the impact of their absence. Map out the interdependence between key roles and functions, and determine the minimum personnel and capabilities required to sustain core operations. 2, develop cross-training and knowledge transfer programs. Companies should implement formal training to ensure multiple employees are proficient in critical processes, procedures, and systems. Establish job shadowing, documentation sharing, and mentorships to initiatives to capture and distribute institutional and compliance knowledge, and then conduct regular tabletop exercises to test an organization's ability to function without key personnel. 3, maintain comprehensive, up-to-date documentation. Document all mission-critical processes, systems, and protocols in clear, accessible formats. You should regularly review and update documentation to account for changes and improvements or different risks as your risks evolve. Ensure documentation is stored securely and readily available to authorized personnel. Number 4, prioritize critical operations and functions. Compliance should identify the most essential services and capabilities that they're delivering and develop tiered business continuity strategies that prioritize the restoration of critical operations should they fail. Compliance should allocate resources, personnel, and accordingly to ensure the continuity of priority compliance functions. 5, establish robust emergency compliance succession planning. Clearly define emergency chain of command and decision-making authorities for your compliance function. You should cross-train potential successors and provide them with regular training and exposure to leadership responsibilities. Regularly review and update emergency succession plans to account for personnel changes. Number 6, implement realistic compliance testing and validation. Should conduct comprehensive compliance continuity plan testing, including scenario-based exercises and simulations. From these simulations, gather feedback, identify gaps, and continuously refine plans and procedures. Establish key performance indicators to measure the effectiveness of your compliance continuity efforts. By implementing these strategies, compliance functions can effectively apply the lessons from Spock's brain and enhance their overall compliance, continuity, and resilience.
I hope you'll join me tomorrow when we take up the Enterprise incident for our next episode in Trekking Through Compliance.
If you enjoyed this episode of Trekking Through Compliance, you can help it grow by sharing it with the biggest Trek fan you know.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.